YouTube, welcome back to our kitchen. I'm back with another keto carnivore friendly recipe for you. In today's video, I am making my pork and veal meatballs, which is a simple weeknight dinner. You can absolutely make this with ground beef as well, or basically whatever blend of ground meat you like. I personally like pork and veal together. It's got a nice mild flavor, but it's still very fatty and satiating. This is also a perfect meal prep recipe. You can make large batches of these meatballs in advance, store them into your freezer for up to 3 months, and whenever you're feeling hungry or you need a quick dinner or a meal, you can just pop them right into the oven for 20 minutes. Now, traditional meatballs are made with breadcrumbs as a binder so the meatballs don't fall apart. Today, I'm going to be using pork rinds. You can also use almond flour for this recipe. Pork rinds and almond flour can be substituted on a one-to-one basis. I'm just gonna keep it carnivore today and use the pork rinds, but feel free to use almond flour as well. So for my ingredients today, I'm starting with half a pound of ground pork and half a pound of ground veal. Feel free to use whatever combination of ground meat you like. I know another popular combination is to use beef, veal, and pork, so you could use a third of each. You can use ground lamb, bison, elk, whatever you can find or have on hand. So to my meat, I'm going to add 1/3 of a cup of shredded Parm cheese. When it comes to meatballs, I find that Parm cheese works best. 1 egg. Now, seasonings are basically to taste. This is what I'm going to add today. I'm going to use half a teaspoon of garlic powder, half a teaspoon of onion powder, 2 tablespoons of dried parsley. Feel free to also use fresh if you'd like. 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, and just a pinch of salt. Now, the pork rinds and the Parm cheese do have a little bit of salt in them already, so not too much, just a little bit for flavor. Now I'm gonna grind up my pork rinds. We are gonna need a total of about half a cup ground up. Where's the opening for this? That's a big boy. I think that should be about half a cup. It doesn't need to be as fine as flour or breadcrumbs. I would say fine, but not ultra fine. So that ended up being about 35 grams, or half of the small bag of unground pork rinds, which gave me about half a cup once ground. Now I'm gonna add that back into the mixture and give this all a good mix. I'm just gonna mix this all until it's fairly incorporated, then I'm gonna use my hands to roll out the meatballs. Really liking that green color that the parsley gives to the mixture. Now, these meatballs can be cooked in 2 ways. You can either cook them stovetop or you can bake them in the oven. So I have a 12 by 16 baking sheet here that I've just lined down with some parchment paper. I'm going to roll out these meatballs into 1-inch diameter. 1 pound of meat makes approximately 20 to 25 meatballs, depending on how large you roll them out. One pro tip is that if you wet your hands a little bit, the meat won't stick as much to your fingers. Feel free to also use an ice cream scoop if you'd like. I personally just like working with my hands when it comes to meatballs. Another tip that I have, if you want that really perfect round shape, if you're rolling with your hands, is to roll very quickly, but also very gently. Like, you don't want to be pressing down on the meatballs because that's going to flatten them. Bit of a bicep workout. So I ended up getting about 24 meatballs with 1 pound of meat. Now, these meatballs can be cooked 2 ways. You can either cook them stovetop or in your oven. Now, if you cook them in your oven, you'll need your oven to be at 350 degrees, and these will cook for about 20 minutes. If you do it on the stove top, it's about 2 to 3 minutes aside, or until the meatballs reach an internal temperature of 160 degrees. I'm actually going to split this batch in half today, cook half on the stove top and half in the oven so you can see the difference between the two. I did grate a little bit more Parm cheese on top after I plated the meatballs, just for a little bit more flavor. You know that we love cheese here on this channel. If you're on the carnivore diet, ground pork and ground veal are fatty cuts of meat with optimal fat to protein ratios, making this a perfect standalone meal. You can also dip it with some high-fat Greek yogurt, sour cream, you can put a little bit of cream cheese on the side. If you lean keto, feel free to add some marinara sauce, make sure there isn't too many carbs or sugar in it. Or you can make a low-carb homemade gravy to go with it. A lot of different options, super flexible recipe. If you're carnivore, the seasonings I use today are basically to taste. Feel free to modify or adjust according to your taste and tolerance. You also don't need to be on any sort of diet to enjoy pork and veal meatballs. They're very, very tasty. So now I'm going to dig in. I'm so excited. I'm going to start with one of the oven baked meatballs. You can see some nice color developed on the bottom. That's really tasty. The meatballs are moist and flavorful from all the seasonings that we used. They're tender, they're cooked all the way through. I find that the flavor of ground pork and veal are more mild than flavors of like ground beef and ground lamb, which are more pungent. It's just a different taste than your regular beef meatballs, but I really enjoy this. Now I'm just digging into the pan-fried one. You can see all of the amazing color that we got cooking it with the cast iron. Now a lot of traditional meatballs recipe do coat the meatballs in flour just to get that golden brown sear on the outside if you're cooking it stovetop. However, you can see today that you really don't need to add flour at all. And of course we substituted the breadcrumbs for pork rinds, and you can see here that the texture definitely held together. There was no falling apart. They were very easy to cook on the stove. Ready to dig in. Oh, that's good. That's really good. I personally prefer it with the sear. It definitely elevates the meatball a little bit. And I find that the flavor and the moisture do lock in a little bit better when you cook it on the stovetop. If you're making this as a weeknight dinner, I do think the oven option is a little bit more convenient. You just pop them into the oven and they're done. You don't really have to deal with cleanup or oil splattering everywhere. I think the pork rinds did a really good job of binding the meatball together while adding some good flavor. This is really, really tasty. I could probably eat half this plate. Alrighty, now it's time for the hubby taste test. Let's see how much he likes it.
This isn't my first time trying it. I already know they're gonna be good, but I prefer them seared too. They're a little bit crispier.
Yeah.
Really good.
What would be your favorite way of eating the meatballs? Just straight up, or
I usually
dip it in?
I like to eat them plain.
Yeah,
personally.
Pure carnivore here.
Yeah, just a plate of meat's good for me. The seasonings go really well with it too.
Yeah.
It's like Italian style, right?
Yeah, Italian style. I think Italian style meatballs, they like to use the pork, beef, and veal blend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty traditional Italian style.
Yeah.
You really taste the cheese. I don't really notice the pork rinds though, I guess.
No, it's good though.
Yeah.
You know, it adds a little bit of flavor without, you're not eating a pork rind meatball, you know?
Yeah.
You're eating a regular meatball.
Yeah, it's just for the
For the binding together, yeah. You don't need flour, breadcrumbs, anything, any sort of carbs.
You know what, these come out pretty crispy too.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think it might be the pork rinds, the fat that's in the pork rinds.
Yeah.
When it bake it, it gets crispy. But yeah, we eat these all the time, so they're really good. Super easy, right?
Yeah, super easy. Weeknight meal, convenient, fast, economical. You can just do ground beef and ground pork, or if you don't.
Yeah, they're definitely better than the IKEA meatballs, which I love too.
If you liked my video today, please give me a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and it helps the channel grow. Leave a comment down below and let me know your favorite way of making meatballs. Until next time.